In this movie, I'd like to talk a little bit more about working with the chatpod and how you can use it to break the ice in your meeting and get your attendees talking and interacting with each other. So I'm back here in the welcome layout I created in the previous movie, and if you recall, I created this layout as sort of the entry point for my meeting, with pods set up so everyone can see who else is in the room in the attendees pod, what the agenda is in the notes pod, and I also set up the chat pod so they could chit-chat while waiting for the meeting or presentation to begin. But just putting a chat pod in the room isn't a guarantee that people will start talking to each other, especially if they're not well acquainted. And having them chat with each other is a good way to get them in a collaborative mood. So you might want to get the ball rolling once people start arriving by typing some conversational questions, like the always popular, "How's the weather where you are today?" Or anything else to get people involved in the meeting, rather than just sitting there staring at their screens waiting for something to happen. And hopefully that'll get people talking. Now, as people converse with each other, the chatbot will start to look very busy. With all the text the same size, it's not easy to tell at a glance who's talking. Now, as a host, I may want to make my replies stand out a bit more. So I can go to the options menu, and I can choose a color for myself. Maybe I'll select green. And now my messages will be in green. If you're presenting with others, you might find it useful to ask your co-presenters to change the color of their chat messages as well, so you can easily distinguish their texts from participants' texts. So for example, in this case, Corey here is one of the other presenters, so I might ask her over audio to change her text to, say, red. And there it is. Now, of course, if every single person changes their color, it becomes just as difficult to pick specific people out, so you may ask your participants to please leave their text black. Two other useful options in the chat pod are the ability to make the text bigger by going to text size. And all users can do this, and it only affects their own display, so everyone can set the text size to where they like. And you can also turn on timestamps by choosing Show Timestamps. That way you can see exactly when something was typed. Sometimes when you're presenting, you might not notice someone has typed something in the chat pod. Having the timestamp available lets you know how much time has passed since a comment was made or a question was asked, and you can respond appropriately with a "sorry I didn't see your question" or something like that. Another useful feature of the chat pod is that web and email links are displayed live, meaning when you enter a website, for example, remember to take advantage of our account at lynda.com, this web address becomes clickable. You just have to make sure to put the www in front of the address. But as long as you do that, any participants can click on that link to go to the website. It also works with email addresses. So clicking on an email link would open the participant's email client. Now, if the conversation in the chat pod is lively, or if someone has provided useful information or insight that you'd like to keep, under the options menu, you can choose to email the chat history. That will email the transcript of the chat to the account you as the host are using for your login. So you can capture the entire chat history and use it later for discussion, for meeting minutes, to copy and paste out snippets, or for whatever other purpose you need. Lastly, you also have the ability to clear the chat pod, which is something I might want to do before I launch into the main presentation. I just come to the options menu and choose Clear Chat. That way I can get the casual chit-chat off the screen, which can act as sort of a subtle indicator that it's time to get down to business. So that's the chat pod. Used correctly, it's a great tool for getting people engaged in your meeting and making them active participants rather than people who just sit there staring at the screen. It's a way to get conversation going, it's a way you can gather feedback, and it's a way to customize the experience of your meeting to make it more about the people who are participating.